Welcome back, and today we'll be talking about Andrea CHENIER and its recordings. I've seen quite a bit of comments saying that Andrea CHENIER is an overrated opera. I can see where they're coming from. The music isn't that coherent, and at some point it just fails to shine. But in my opinion, it's one of the best ever written, and here's why. It has one of the best, if not the best, tenor aria ever written. It has one of the best, if not the best, baritone aria ever written, and it has one of the best, if not the best, soprano aria ever written. Those are the Improviso, Nemico della Patria, and La Mamma Morta, respectively, and that is enough to make Andrea Chenier the opera I would choose if I could only listen to one opera in my entire life. Um, while the music isn't, that inspiring at some parts, the music in the big arias are certainly very well written, and the libretto is just amazing. The Improviso, the Nemico della Patria, La Mamma Morta, the text in there, you might ignore it, but the text in there, it's incredibly written, and it never ever fails to move me to tears. These three arias, given that a decent singer is singing it and not some guy that just goes and wrecks it. Anyways, so of course these three arias will be the three checkpoints for our three characters today. Let's talk about the first one then. The title role of Andrea Chenier, and that would be the checkpoint I've chosen. The Improviso un dia l'azzurro sbasio. The specific lines I've chosen is from Incontanta Miseria until the very end of the aria. So the lyrics in English are this: confronted by such misery, what does the people do? Only your eyes have expressed humanly, to me, a look of pity, and when I looked at you, you were like an angel, and I said, here is the beauty of life. But then, to your words, a new sadness had wounded my heart. O beautiful young lady, do not despise the words of a poet. Listen, you do not know love, love a divine gift, do not scorn it. The life and the soul of the world is love. Absolutely beautiful writing here by Luigi Illica, and the music to go with it is as excellent as the libretto is. And why I've chosen particularly this passage, because you have to hear the different tones in Chenier's singing in comparison, to the libretto. So the first line, in cotanta miseria la patrizia prole, che fa? So, che fa? What do they do? It has to be sung with, this gentle tone as if it was questioning, what do you do? And then, of course, you have to immediately switch to a very subdued tone. Sol'occhio vostro esprime umanamente qui un guardo di pietà. The word humanly, umanamente, has to be sung with, with humanness, because that's the context. And un guardo di pietà, a look of pity, and you have to hear the pity that touches Chenier's heart here. Onde ho guardato a voi, sì come un angelo. As I looked at you, you were like an angel. So it's an angel. Sì come un angelo has to be, extremely touching. And then you have to legato, you have to bring the phrase onto the next line is come un angelo e dissi ecco la bellezza della vita. Here is the beauty of life. And this line has to be sung with utmost emotion, because what happens in the background in the orchestra when he sings this line, that theme is the love motif, so to say, of CHENIER. That's the love motif, and it reoccurs in the Act 1 duet, and the cello solo before La Mamma Morta is the same melody as this one. So, Ecco la bellezza della vita has to be sung, it's grand, and you have to hear, CHENIER falling in love. And then another change of tone here. Ma poi alle vostre parole. But then, by hearing your words, un velo dolor m'ha colto in pieno petto. A new pain has, wounded my heart. You have to hear the pain in this line. O giovinetta bella, tuon poeta non disprezzato il detto. He's basically begging Maddalena here. He is imploring her not to, scorn the words of a poet. Listen to me, I actually love you. And here comes the climax of the whole aria. Listen, you do not know love. Love, a divine gift. Do not scorn it. The life and soul of the world is love. Here, I think well, it's written this way. Udite non conoscete amor, amor divino dono non lo CHENIER. But I think if it's a good interpretation, the CHENIER should apply a portamento up to that B flat, so it doesn't go amor, and that's just a bit too harsh for me. I would prefer non conoscete amor, amor divino dono non lo CHENIER del mondo anima e vita e l'amor. The last lines, I don't care if you shout it out, because CHENIER is so impassioned here. I don't care if you just yell, divino dono, non lo CHENIER, del mondo, l'anima e vita e l'amor. And that's what Del Monaco does, and I absolutely adore it. You can just hear the passion in his voice, the love he has for Maddalena, and if you just yell those words out, that's the theatrical and dramatic effect you want to hear from CHENIER. The second checkpoint we have here is for the baritone role, Carlo Gerard, and his aria, Nemico della Patria. I think you can't, just choose a specific phrase from this, because the entire aria has to be sung perfectly with different tone changes and stuff. So I've kept it full for the checkpoint, and let's see what we should hear from Gerard in this aria. The first part of it, the recitative part, so to speak, it has to be sung with, a scorning tone, because, well, the context here is basically, Gerard wants Maddalena, which loves, CHENIER, but, he wants her, and that's why, Gerard is going to convict CHENIER as a criminal, that way he could get Maddalena. And, of course, Gerard himself doesn't believe that CHENIER deserves the punishment. He is just, he just wants Maddalena, and that's what he's doing. So it has to be started with, scorn, with a bite, because he knows that he's being hypocritical here, but he has to do it anyway. So, Nemico della patria, e vecchia fiaba che beatamente ancor la beve il popolo. An enemy of his country. It is an old wives' tale that gladly the public still swallows. And then the strings come in with accent. Dun 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 dun. Nato a Constantinopoli, straniero. Studio San Sir, soldato, traditore, didum Jesum complice, e poeta, subvertitore di cuori e di costumi. This part has to be sung with hate, because what he's doing here is basically singing out the charges that he wants to, convict CHENIER of. Born in Constantinople, a foreigner, studied at St. Cyr, a soldier, traitor, accomplice of Gemurias, a poet, corrupter of hearts and of traditions. obviously he doesn't believe in this at all, but he has to convict him anyway because he's working for the French Revolution, and that's why he has to sing this with hate, with bite, and with a conflicting quality, a hypocritical one, so to speak. And then comes the aria part of the aria, very pensive, starting. Undi mera di gioia passar fra gli odi e le vendette, puro innocente forte, gigante mi credea. Once I lived happily in the realm of hatred and vengeance, pure, innocent, and strong. I believed myself to be a giant. So he's obviously singing about the days where he was innocent, he wasn't working under the revolution, and convicting innocent people just for the sake of it. And a giant, I believed myself. Gigante mi credea. That gigante, a giant, has to be sung with size. And mi credea, I thought myself, it has to be sung with the grandiose quality, so to speak, because I believed myself to be a giant. But bringing it to the next phrase, gigante mi credea, son sempre un servo, I'm still a servant. Ho mutato patrone, un servo obbediente di violenta passione. I've only changed masters. Un servo obbediente. These words have to be sung with accent, with attack, because I am a slave, an obedient slave of the violent passion. And of course, the violent passion is what he scorns himself of. He hates to do this, but he still has to do it. So the attack there has to be there. Di violenta passione, a peggio uccido e tremo, e mentre uccido io piango. Ah, worse, I kill and tremble, and while I kill, I weep. So, of course, the kill parts have to be sung with, that same attack, but when it comes to io piango, I weep, I cry. The tone change there has to be very obvious because you're going from I'm killing people, but I'm crying. I don't want to do this. So the tone change on io piango has to be there. The next phrase, io della ridentrice figlio del primo dito il grido suo per il mondo ed al suo il mio grido unito. He's singing here, I, son of the revolution, first heard the cry of the people, and then I joined it with my own. He's singing about, the roots of the revolution. It wasn't supposed to be, convicting and killing innocent people. And then he sings, Ores marido la fede nel sognato destino. Have I now lost faith in that dream? This line has to be very pensive because, have I lost faith in the dream of the revolution of a beautiful world where everyone is equal, and now what I'm doing is killing people? The pensiveness is there. And then a tone change to a hope, to a glimmer of hope, and a nostalgic look back at before. Come era irradiato di gloria il mio cammino. How illuminated with glory was my path. A look back at what he was supposed to be. And Gloria with glory. And that part, of course, has to be sung, gently, because it's a look back at what he's lost. And then the part here is the most important part, because Gerard, he's a character depicted to be evil, but in the depths of his heart, he still has, the humanness to it. And from this line onwards, these are the lines where he finally changes from the villain at the start of the opera to the good person at the end. And the lyrics, the conscience of the heart to reawaken in men, to collect the tears of the oppressed and the suffering, to make the world a paradise, transform men into gods, and with a single kiss and embrace, to love all humanity. And, well, what he's singing here, he's loveless. He wants love because with compassion, with love, he can, become the good person that he once was. And of course, it has to be sung with utmost emotion. In one single kiss, you can see how he longs for that kiss, how he longs for the love and the love that he lacks. And eventually, when he himself feels the love between Maddalena and CHENIER, he changes his ways. And so, un sol bacio, with one single kiss, this line is incredibly important, falling on the high F sharp, has to be sung with utmost emotion, because this is the line where he goes from the villain to the good person. So it starts with, the graveness but pensiveness. La coscienza nel cuore destar delle genti. And then, because this is his mission, and then the next line, raccogliere le lacrime dei vinti e sofferenti. The tears, to collect the tears of the oppressed and the suffering. So, he's obviously singing about, the tears of the oppressed, so it has to be a bit more, subdued, a bit more sorrowful. The next line, another tone change, back to the grandiose singing that he has to do. Fare del mondo un pantheon, gli uomini indimutare. Make the world a paradise and transform men into gods. And then here comes the most important line. E non sol bacio, e non sol bacio braccio, tutte le genti amare, e non sol bacio abbraccio, tutte le genti amar. And it's incredibly emotional because he's singing, and with one single kiss, he's longing for that love that he has been lacking since, he was born. That love, that compassion that can transform him and bring him onto the better path, become a better human. So that F sharp on bacio, un sol bacio, one single kiss, that F sharp on the word kiss has to be sung with incredible emotional intensity. It has to be sung with sorrow because he's longing for that love that he doesn't have. The sorrow has to be there, the intensity has to be there. You have to hear like a tear-like quality on that F sharp. And the final line, tutte le genti amar. The last note, amar, to love, all humanity, to love, that word, to love, because that love is what he is longing for, to, become a better person. That word has to be sung with, grandioseness. He has to hold it for as long as he can, and when the aria ends, there's a massive catharsis of, all his sorrow and all his, lovelessness transforming into, the better cause that he is about to be. Too often I've heard, baritones interpreting this aria and this role in general as if he is like an all evil, killer, he's a rapist, he just wants to rape Maddalena. No, that's not what he is. He's discovering the human part of what he once was here, and so it's not an evil role in this aria per se. It has to be sung with, compassion, with sympathy, with utmost emotion, and desperation for love. He is loveless. He just wants love. He doesn't per se wants to rape Maddalena. That's not what he wants to do. He wants to get the love of someone, and that's the reason why at the very end, even though Maddalena doesn't love him, but after hearing Maddalena express her love for Chenier, Gerard is also convinced to let Chenier be free, or at least try to make him free, and that is why that Un Sol Bacio, he's not singing about raping Maddalena. He is singing about having, discovering the compassion, the human side of his heart. And that's why if you give me someone like Colzani who do, roles that are extremely evil, like Barnaba is a rapist, and he sings this aria as if uh, he is singing Barnaba, declaring that I will get Jaconda, I will have sex with her no matter what. That is not what Gerard is singing here. Gerard isn't like I have to have sex with Maddalena, whatever what. No, it's I have to discover the human side, the compassion in my heart that I once have, and I can only achieve that through discovering love. And that is why I much prefer an interpretation like Cappuccini, who is actually singing with sorrow and with emotion and as if it's like a good person, instead of Colzani's evil villain approach, so to speak. Now I've talked about that for way too long. It's time to move on to our third aria and third checkpoint of this opera. It is Maddalena's aria, La Mamma Morta. Again, because this aria is just so beautifully written. The lyrics are just so beautiful that I have to keep it whole. In fact, this checkpoint, the excerpt that I've chosen, starts one line before the aria even starts. So the checkpoint I would suggest you to listen to is starting from Se della vita sua tu fai prezzo il mio corpo, ebbene prendimi. If the price for Chenier's life is my body, well, take me instead. And then the cello solo starts. What about this line, I have to stress, is that it's not a threat. Maddalena is not threatening Gerard, saying that, oh, if you have the balls to rape me, do it. No, that's not what she's singing about. She's singing about her love for Chenier, because she knows that the only way to save Chenier is to let Gerard do his stuff. And, well, what I've heard is, singers like Milanov singing this as if it were a threat, just putting way too much stress on every single note. It shouldn't be sung like that. It should be sung with a very gentle, chest voice, a sorrowful tear-like quality, in the way that Callas does it. And the cello solo starts, it's the same melody during, Ecco la bellezza della vita in the improviso. And that's the same melody, so it's reminding Maddalena of her love of Chenier. And at the same time, it's reminding Gerard that Maddalena has actually found the love that he had wanted, to get so much in the Nemico della Patria. So then, in the middle of the cello solo, Gerard sings Come sa amare. How does she know how to love? Because, well, Maddalena has known love now, and Gerard still hasn't. So that has to be sung with, sorrow. It has to be sung with emotional quality. But we're not talking about Gerard here. We're talking about Maddalena. So after that absolutely beautiful cello solo, I love to play it. I'm a cellist if you didn't know. And it's one of the most beautiful cello solos we have in the entire repertory. Anyway, Maddalena. The first line of the aria should be sung with the same quality, a dark, gloomy quality that she has in the first line, Se della vita sua. It starts La mamma morta, mano alla porta della stanza mia, moriva e mi salvava. They killed my mother at the doorstep of my room. She died and she saved me. and of course it has to be dark and gloomy because it is basically just fluctuating between two notes. The chest voice has to be there, but it's not an overpowering one. It's not a suffocating one. It's one that has just enough weight to it that it brings out the tear-like quality. La mamma morta, mano alla porta della stanza mia, moriva e mi salvava. Sorry for that. I think your ears are probably in need of surgery. Anyway, I don't know how to sing. This is a disclaimer, and all that I'm doing is demonstrating the vocal line and the accents of the nuances of what the singer should do. I am by no means a singer, and I have no idea what I'm doing with the singing. I'm just demonstrating. So because one comment said I hope you don't record or anything soon. Well, you're not taking, Toscanini singing seriously. There's a clip of that. You're not taking that seriously. So you shouldn't take this seriously as well, because I'm just demonstrating the nuances that you should have. Anyway, the next line, the anxiety has to be there because she goes, then at the dead of night, I arrived with Bercy, when suddenly a bright glow flickered and lights were ahead of me in the dark street. I looked. My childhood home was on fire. I was alone. So the accent here, the stress, has to be on, when suddenly the bright glow flickered and the lights and stuff. It should be something like so you have to have, the attack, the accent on un livido bagliore and la cuba via. And then the lines has to be much more, pensive and much more dark because guardo, bruciava il loco di mia culla, così vi sola. I looked, my childhood home was on fire. How I was alone. And guardo, I looked. Well, it has to be, very dark because she's looking at her childhood home burning on fire. And of course, it doesn't, take a whole lot of explaining why there should be much more, darkness, sorrow to this. So you can hear the, color change and tone change. By the way, I just give up. I just play a recording of Callus because it's self-explanatory. And then the next lines should be a similar tone to, Così fui sola, because what she sings is, I was surrounded by nothingness, hunger and misery, deprivation, the danger. I fell ill, and Bercy, so good and pure, made a market, a deal of her beauty for me. So the lines like fame, miseria, il bisogno, il periglio, cadi malata, up until here has to be dark with chest voice, of course, and it has to have that dark, sorrowful quality to it. And then the tone change here. Ebbere si buona e pura di sua bellezza. Because, well, she's singing about the purity of Bercy, di sua bellezza, of her beauty. And then another tone change here. Di sua bellezza ha fatto un mercato incontrato per me. has made a market a deal for me because Bersi was selling her body as a prostitute, and Maddalena is of course very guilty for that. So the stress, the accent has to be there. Un contratto per me, un mercato, un contratto per me. The next line has to be sung with utmost sorrow because what she sings is, I bring misfortune to all who care for me. You know, the guilt there, the sorrow there. It's not something I can't do, so I'm gonna play Carlos, who just does this line perfectly. I haven't heard anything like that. The amount of colors and tones and the amount of expressiveness in this one line is crazy. With a few words, she completely just blows this line away, and I can't demonstrate it because I'm not Carlos. But then from there onwards, it becomes a song of love because, well, basically it was then, in my grief, that love came to me. So this line, another tone change from, the despair in this line, Porto suddenly to a glimmer of hope because the love is here. It's not, suddenly, bam, it's the sun, it's hopeful. No, it's a glimmer of hope. And you have to hear, a very slight nuance of just a little bit of hope there. And that's what you want to hear. And then from that onwards, Madalena breaks into, a love struck, a love struck song about CHENIER's love for her. And it's very poetic here, the lyrics. A voice full of harmony says. So from this point onwards, it's a, paraphrasing of what CHENIER's love has apparently said to her as a metaphor, but this is what the love is saying. Keep on living. I am life itself. Your heavens are in my eyes. You are not alone. I collect all your tears, and I am in your way. I walk with you and I support you. Smile and hope. I am love. Are you surrounded by blood and Maya? I am divine. I am oblivion. And then the climax is here. The most amount of love and passion that one has ever felt has to be here. I am the God that serves the world. I descend from the heavens and I make this earth a paradise. And then here, the high B natural. It's just, yo son l'amor, yo son l'amor, l'amor. Very straightforward, but this is perhaps the most difficult phrase in terms of expressiveness to execute in the entirety of opera. Why? Firstly, that scream, it has to be sorrow, and it has to be, filled with pain. But in the same time, that pain has been taken away by the love that she has felt. It's a very heartfelt singing, and that B natural, that high B natural, has to be full of sorrow. And I'm just gonna play Carlos here. you can hear how desperate she is, how impassioned she is when she sings this. Well, obviously, the chest voice on Tutto intorno è sangue e fango by Blood and Mire, that chest voice there is incredible because it's the love telling her that everything around his blood is terrible, and that terrible things have to be sung with chest voice because it's heavy. But then a change of tone. Io son divino, io son l'oblio. I am oblivion, I am divine. That is, transcendent quality of the voice. And then breaks into the most passion in the climax. I am the God above the world. I descend from the heavens and I make this earth a paradise. That be natural. So much pain, so much sorrow, so much quality in that one note. It is absolutely incredible. The pain there is undescribable. And then she just repeats, I am love, I am love, I am love. But all three times that she sings l'amore is different, because the first time it goes, io son l'amore. The chest voice on ore is not something that you hear in other sopranos, and you can hear the desperation, the absolute impassioned quality that she is doing here by putting so much stress on these two notes. And then io son l'amor, l'amor. The last time she sings l'amour, the last note of the entire aria, the chest voice there, you can hear that it's impassioned. She is, on the verge of collapsing because of this love and the sorrow that it has brought her, and the catharsis that she has experienced because of the love. And if you don't have chest voice in these last notes, then it's not a good interpretation of the aria. That is just simply put because the chest voice here symbolizes the love, because it's on l'amore. And you have to hear that Maddalena is absolutely going overboard. She is absolutely impassioned. And if there's no chest voice here, then it's not a good interpretation of this aria. At least that's my opinion, and I believe that chest voice is absolutely crucial for this aria and this role per se, because it's absolutely impassioned, and the sorrow there is just incredible. And Callas, man. And I've spent more than half an hour talking about these arias, maybe because I'm a pathetic fuck, and like Gerard, I'm just longing for that un sol bacio. But whatever, let's move on to the recordings, shall we? I've chosen, as usual, 6 categories and 5 recordings for each of them. Our first category, as usual, is the commercially available ones, which are good. The first one I've chosen here is the second complete recording of this opera. It's recorded in 1922 with Lorenzo Malagioli conducting the orchestra and chorus of La Scala. Luigi Marini is CHENIER, Carlo Caleffi is Gerard, and Lina Brunarassa is Maddalena. Now, Marini, let's talk about Marini first. A very expressive voice. There is, the tear-like quality, the poet quality built into his voice, as well as having a very beautiful spinto voice. So, it's not only about the vocal weight and the, penetrating quality of the voice. It's also about the, innate expressiveness of the voice, the tear-like quality, the poet quality. It's there, and Luigi Marini is a very great CHENIER. Carlo Galeffi, he sings Gerard here. I think that he's a bit, on the heavy side for baritones, a bit more heft, and a bit more, evil quality. His Gerard is not bad at all, vocally speaking. His first aria, where he was still, an evil person, Gerard, is delivered with, incredible bite, and with incredible vocality. Just things that he's lacking a bit in, the expressive quality, the sorrow that Gerard has in Act 3. Lina Brunarassa as Maddalena. She is the pinnacle of verismo singing, even more so than Claudia Muzio, I would say. I absolutely love Bruna Rasa. Of course, we will talk about her Santuzza, but here, as Maddalena, she is no worse. The chest voice is there, the expressiveness, the tears, the vocal acting, everything is there, and Bruna Rasa is as perfect as a Maddalena as you would want to get. All in all, a very precious recording and a very good one. Now, for our second recording, this is from 1941, again in studio, conducted by Oliviero De Fabrites, with the orchestra and chorus of La Scala. Andrea CHENIER is Beniamino Ghilli, Gerard is Gino Becchi, Maddalena is Maria Caniglia, Contessa di Cogni is sung by a 30-year-old Giulietta Simeonato here, and the 25-year-old Giuseppe Taddei takes up the roles of Fucchior Tinville and Pietro Fleville. Italo Taio, also 25 here, sings Ruscher. So three stars with three soon-to-be stars. Ghilli as CHENIER. Now, he definitely fulfills, that poet quality, that tear-like quality, and his improviso is excellent, is absolutely excellent. But what I think about, Ghilli, for the role of CHENIER is that in, Act 3, stuff like, Si fui soldato, big arias like that, where vocal heft is absolutely necessary. He doesn't, come up to the amount of dramaticism that Delmonico or other, spinto CHENIERs can give. But he does have a very melodic voice, which is good for, one half of CHENIER, not good for the another half. Gino Becchi as Carlo Gerard, same case as Galeffi, I would say. Very, very well delivered first aria. The second one is a bit lacking in expressive quality. Maria Caniglia as Maddalena. We usually think of her as, more of an old, a very weighty voice, but a matronly one, so to speak. And Maddalena is a very young girl, having just fallen in love for the first time. So, the verismo singing is obviously there, the weight is there, but the youthfulness of the voice is a bit lacking, so to speak. But all in all, it's still a very balanced and a very, very good recording of this opera. Now, our third one is a live one, but still a commercially available one because of its artistic value. It's from 1955, conducted by Antonino Voto at La Scala. Andrea CHENIER is Mario del Monaco, Carlo Gerard is Aldo Proti, Maddalena is Maria Callas. Enzo Sordello, the decent baritone, takes up Pietro Fleville here, and the smaller roles are sung by Lucia Danieli as Madelon and Maria Amadini as the Countess. Now, let's talk about Delmonico first, although he's not the star of this recording. Delmonico recorded Andrea CHENIER 6 times. Not a lot, but every one of them are absolutely perfect. This is not his best one, I would say, but let me just say that his improviso here is excellent. I prefer the versions from 1949, 1954, and 1961 to this one, but that's just me. And the part of the reason why he isn't in best form here is because he's intimidated by Callas. So basically, this one was supposed to be a trovatore, but Delmonico, at the very last moment, said that he was, indisposed and that he couldn't sing Manrico. And instead, he chose to sing CHENIER, which is even more demanding than Manrico, I would say. That means he being indisposed is just a lie, because, Callas is a very acclaimed Leonora, and Delmonico didn't want Callas to outshine him on another recording and on another production. And that's why he requested it to be changed to Andrea CHENIER, a role that, Callas had never sung before Maddalena. Callas learned the role, and she, although having only sung this, in one production throughout her career, it was the best Maddalena to have ever been sung in the history of opera. People will come at me for this. I know a lot of Tebaldians and Milanovians out there going to say that you're absolutely fucking idiot for saying that Callas is the best Maddalena. I think, well, Tebaldi and Milanov are very, very good as well. I've included a lot of recordings with them later on this list. But Callas is just the threshold that nobody is going to reach in the realm of opera. Anyways, the singing here, Delmonico as Andrea CHENIER, a very good improviso. The second aria, not the second aria, the second big aria, I should say, Come un bel dì di maggio. A bit underwhelming because, well, he's not Corelli. He doesn't have the kind of, how should I say, the kind of built-in sorrowful, plaintive voice that Corelli has. But his improviso is like any other of his improvisos, sung with absolute passion. The way he sings Divino dono non lo schernir del mondo, l'anima e vita e l'amor. That is unequaled, absolutely unequaled, and I absolutely love it. But, of course, the star here is Callas, her La Mama Morta. I personally believe that her recording of La Mama Morta here, live 1955, not the studio one in 54, that one is underwhelming. Here, live 55, Callas La Mama Morta, surely it has to be among the top 5 recordings of, a single aria ever having been recorded. That's just how great it is. And Callas is a miracle. She is an absolute miracle here in this aria. The rest of the role, there isn't, that much to talk about. Her duets with Delmonico are very well sung, but there just isn't the enough opportunities for her to be her expressive self, so to speak. Aldo Protti as Gerard. No, he doesn't, seem to be convinced by, Gerard becoming a better person. He sings the role as if Gerard were the evil rapist throughout the entire recording. So, Protti, not a fan of his Gerard, although his Rigoletto is one of the best, but this is not his role. Then we come to another studio recording. This one is from 1956, conducted by Andrea Gavazzeni with the orchestra and chorus of Santa Cecilia. CHENIER is Delmonico, Gerard is Bastianini, and Maddalena is Renata Tebaldi. The smaller roles are sung by Fiorenza Cosotto as Berzi, Silvio Maionica as Ruscher, and Fernando Correana is Matthew. Now, Delmonico's CHENIER in studio is a bit less effective than his live ones, and this is probably my least favorite recording out of the 6 CHENIERs that Delmonico has recorded, because studio, it's just not for him. Studio recording, it just doesn't capture the size, the heft, and the sword-like quality of his voice. The sharp edge isn't recorded that well in studio, but he does get the opportunity to express himself more here in studio, which he does. But he's a bit more subdued in terms of the verismo singing, and Bastianini's Gerard, without a doubt, Ettore Bastianini is the greatest baritone and the greatest Carlo Gerard to ever, grace the stage. But here, in studio, I would usually argue that Bastianini was a better singer in studio than live. Why is that so? Because there's just simply too many colors and nuances in Bastianini's voice to be captured with a, regular recording equipment live. In studio, all that, nuance and colors come out. For some reason here, it doesn't do so that much, because this is relatively early in terms of his recordings of Carlo Gerard, and here he still, takes a very straightforward, very unrefined approach as to how to read the role psychologically. It's still,
quite straightforward, and there's not much nuance to it. Tebaldi as Maddalena here. I don't think that it's that convincing a recording. This one, I believe Tebaldi is, the greatest Maddalena after Callas, but studio recordings just wasn't her strength. And, La Mama Morta here is sung with a bit of a subdued quality. The duets with Delmonico are well sung. They're vocal, but, the studio recording, you can always fix the pitches, you can always fix the sound levels, and the orchestra just drowns them out at places. So I don't particularly enjoy this, recording, but the singing here is top notch. You cannot deny that. Then we have another live recording. It's from 1960, conducted by Lovro von Matacic, with the orchestra and chorus of the Wiener Staatsoper. Andrea CHENIER is Franco Corelli, Carlo Gerard Le Torre Bastianini, Maddalena Renata Tebaldi, and the smaller roles are taken up by pretty big names here as well. Elisabeth Höngen sings the Countess, Hilde Konecny is Madelon, Kostas Pascali sings Pietro Flavile. Now for the three leads. This recording just isn't, their best ones, respectively, at this role. Corelli, I don't know whether he's having a bad night here or something, but he just isn't, very expressive here as CHENIER. Bastianini is perhaps the better one out of the three, in terms of his singing during that night, that, specific night. But the nuance is there, the dark singing is there, but the expressiveness is still lacking. Tebaldi here is a bit overshadowed by Corelli, I would believe. She has had better recordings of Maddalena, honestly, but this is the only Corelli, Bastianini, Tebaldi recording that I've found so far. So this trio combined together is another reason why you should go for this recording, because it's this particular pairing we don't have on other records. Same case as the Gavazzini one, we don't have Delmonico, Bastianini, Tebaldi pairing in CHENIER in other records. Von Matacic, I've never been a fan of Von Matacic's Italian opera. His German opera is very well conducted, but his Italian opera is just not inspiring. That might be partly the reason why Corelli, Bastianini, and Tebaldi aren't at their best here as well. But now we can move on to the rare and very good recordings. The first one is from 1954 from the Met, conducted by Fausto Cleva. Andrea CHENIER is Mario Delmonico, Carlo Gerard Leonard Warren, Maddalena is Zinka Milanov, Bersi is sung by Rosalind Elias, Rucher is Frank Valentino, and Fouquier Tinville is Norman Scott. Delmonico here in this 1954 recording, I think that this is his second best CHENIER, behind only the 1949 excerpts conducted by De Sabata, which I will talk about in the 6th category on great recordings of excerpts, but let's talk about this for now. He delivers an absolutely excellent improviso, one of the best versions you'll ever hear, behind only Corelli 66 and his own from 1949, which I've mentioned. Carlo Gerard is Leonard Warren here. Now, let's just say that Warren is a baritone who can sing evilly and, compassionately, very well simultaneously. He can do that in the same opera, and he does so here in CHENIER. I would think that the first half of Gerard's role, which is just full evil, I feel that Warren is a bit underwhelming in this recording. Well, he covers, and while he covers, he just gives us this round and marbly tone, which isn't as convincing in a evil context, as he would, sing unrestrictedly for the role of Iago. He doesn't do so here because probably in his books the interpretation of Gerard is a good guy from start to end, and that simply isn't true. But the good guy part of Gerard, he does sing exceptionally well here. Milanov as Maddalena, I would say the same as Cornelia's Maddalena, but you cannot deny that her La Mama Morta is more expressive than Cornelia's. It's a very well sung Maddalena. It's one of her signature roles, and she sings it very well here. Now, another one is from 1958, live, conducted by Franco Capuana from San Carlo, Napoli. Andrea CHENIER, Franco Corelli, Carlo Gerard Ettore Bastianini, Maddalena Antonietta Stella, Corelli's wife, Loretta Di Lelio, sings Bersi here, and Miriam Pirazzini sings Madelon. Corelli's CHENIER here, 1958, relatively early for his CHENIERs. I think this was his first CHENIER recording, if I'm not wrong. It's still a very young and a fresh voice here in 1958. There's still a bit of a fast vibrato here, so I would say that this interpretation of CHENIER is not as plaintive, as sorrowful as his later CHENIERs, which I prefer. But here he sings more like a fresh voice, a truly idiomatic young poet, which is in love. But I just the fact that give it 5 years, 10 years more, and his voice would mature into a gorgeous, sorrowful quality just because a later Corelli exists. It's that fact alone which overshadows the young Corelli here as CHENIER. Bastianini as Gerard. This is his second best Gerard, I would say. The best one I will talk about later, from 1963. This one, he sings with vocal power and with nuance, with a lot of nuance. It isn't as how should I say? It's not as colored. It's not as it doesn't have as much details as he does in his 1963 studio one, but here he sings with vocal power and with an impassioned quality, which we all want in Gerard. Antonietta Stella, however, is a bit of a letdown here because I've always thought that Stella has had a sort of cardboard voice. It has a very, very good timbre, but it's in terms of interpretation, it's a bit dry for my liking, and for that reason alone, she doesn't have the expressiveness that you want to hear in Maddalena. Next, we have a recording from 1960, specifically the one from 26th of March 1960 from the Met with Fausto Cleva. Andrea CHENIER is Richard Tucker, Carlo Gerard Ettore Bastianini, Maddalena is Renata Tebaldi, Ruscher is Frank Valentino again, Matthew is Ezio Flagello this time, and Norman Scott is Fouquier Tinville. Tucker's CHENIER. It is one of his greatest roles. Why? Because Tucker has a voice which is built for a solid, beefy spinto role. And Andrea CHENIER has that solid, beefy spinto quality in his, duets and later arias. Not necessarily in the improviso, which is much more, expressive than a beefy spinto voice, you would say. Much more gentle, but in his Come un bel dì di maggio, in his two love duets with Maddalena, in Si fui soldato, all of that has a spinto quality that perfectly suits Mr. Tucker. Bastianini here as Gerard, he sings with nuance. He does sing with, a sorrowful quality in Nemico della Patria, but not so much a impassioned quality. There's just a bit of fire lacking in Gerard's heart for Bastianini's 960 recording. Tebaldi as Maddalena here, a very good recording of her Maddalena, much better than the one at Vienna. The expressiveness is much more obvious here. It's much more verismo, so to speak, and there is much more to praise about this than the Vienna one from the same year. Now it is again the Met. This time it's from 1966. Lamberto Cardelli conducts, Franco Corelli as Andrea CHENIER, Anselmo Gosani as Carlo Gerard, Renata Tebaldi as Maddalena, Madelon is sung by Mignon Dunn, Matthew is Raymond Michalski, and Fouquier Tinville is Norman Scott. Now, I think this is Corelli's best CHENIER and Tebaldi's best Maddalena. I think that is quite obvious. First of all, Corelli's improviso here is his best improviso. In 1966, his voice had developed a very, sorrowful, cheer-like, plaintive quality, one that has never been equaled by any other tenor in terms of the expressiveness, the sadness, the innate sorrow in his voice. And you can really hear that in his improviso. On that B flat, there's so many, at the second B flat especially, there's so many colors there. There's so much sorrow, and all in all, it's his best CHENIER for sure, because the matured voice here is unequaled as CHENIER. There are even later recordings in 1966 where his voice has matured even more, but by that point it was a bit out of control. It's a bit old and it's a bit wobbly, but here 1966 is just a balance between maturity and vocal solidity. So yeah, his best CHENIER, his best improviso. And for Tebaldi, as Maddalena, her best La Mama Morta is also from this performance, 1966. Earlier in her career, prior to this performance, I would say, all her recording of La Mama Morta ended with a very weird, chest voice, which goes, Yo soy amor, amor. Never understood that. It's weird. And finally, for once, she doesn't do that here. It's what she does is a very, homogeneous, very beautiful, gentle, rounded, and silky chest voice that we all want at the end of this aria. Her B natural here is spot on as well. It is, sorrow-filled, it has the pain in it, and just all in all a very great recording of La Mama Morta, her best, I would say, and the second best recording of La Mama Morta behind 55 Callas. Anselmo Colzani as Gerard here. I've already talked about him in the checkpoints a bit. He just interprets this whole role from start to end as an evil one, and that's why his Nemico della Patria fails to move me, and the American audience like Colzani or not, but yeah, I'm not a fan particularly of his Gerard, just because he doesn't have the moving quality that you want in hearing a role that transforms from a villain to a morally justified one. Now we have one from 1970. It's conducted by Anton Guadagno with the New Philharmonia Orchestra. It is performed in London. Andrea CHENIER is Carlo Bergonzi, Carlo Gerard is Cheryl Milnes, and Maddalena is Angeles Goulin. Let's talk about Bergonzi first. He recorded CHENIER a lot of times. This one is his best. He is, in very good form here, vocally speaking, because in his not so good nights, his voice would be a bit all over the place because he didn't have a big voice. He had a small one which he always covered, but he has a very nuanced, a very lyrical and gentle voice. Firstly, he benefited from the sound quality here because it's good and he doesn't get drowned by the orchestra sometimes. He doesn't do so here. it captures the nuances of the gentle, of the emotional, gentle poet singing that he does here in CHENIER, which aren't captured so well on other recordings. Cherimones as Gerard, I would say that his Gerard starts off very well because, well, it starts off as an evil character. He does make an attempt to, sound like, an emotionally justified and emotionally moving Gerard towards the end of the opera, but his innate voice is born to sing evil roles, so he doesn't do that 100% perfectly. Angeles Goulin as Madalena here is a very pleasant surprise. She's fairly young here, but her Madalena is sung with maturity in terms of in terms of interpretation. It has a young voice, but it has a vocal quality which is very mature in terms of interpretation. The nuances, the sorrow, the chest voice is there. She really understands the words in the La Mama Morta. She sings every single one of them, and gives them their meaning, just like Callas does. And it's a very good recording of the role of Madalena for Mrs. Goulin here. Now we move on to dark horses. These are overlooked recordings or ignored ones, but in fact they are very good. The first one is conducted by Arturo Basile from 1953 in studio with the orchestra and chorus of Rai in Turin. Andrea CHENIER is Josie Soler, Carlo Gerard Ugo Zavarese, and Maddalena is Renato Tebaldi. First off, Jose Soler, what a voice. I have no idea why he is so little known nowadays. He has the perfect voice for CHENIER. Why am I saying so? The voice, per se, is perhaps the most lyrical and the most gentle voice you will ever hear. It is even more gentle and lyrical than Bergonzi's. And the gentle quality, the poet quality, it's not very verismo alla del Monaco. The Monaco just, does, he just sings his heart out. But this one, from Soler, his CHENIER, particularly his improviso, very subdued, very lyrical, and it's just very gentle, so it touches your heartstrings. Not very, outward singing, but very impressive, very gentle, very beautiful singing. He has one of the most beautiful natural timbres ever, and he uses that perfectly in the role of CHENIER. Ugo Zavarese as Carlo Gerard is a different case. He has what we would consider an ugly timbre, and he uses that well in roles such as, let's say, Di Luna, Conte di Luna. But Gerard is a role that requires both this kind of, ugly, evil quality and a beautiful, moving quality in the latter half of the opera. So he doesn't do so in the latter half of the opera, and that's a letdown. However, Tebaldi here saves the show because, well, this Maddalena from 1953, it isn't, as verismo as you would consider her Maddalena to be. It's much less, outward, much less, unrestrained than her later Maddalenas. But here in 1953, she's more, gentle, vulnerable, young country girl, that kind of stuff. And it's a very gentle reading of the role, just like Soler, and this pairing is incredible, and it is a very, very good recording of this opera. I would say that it's even better than the big name studio ones, such as the Gavazzeni that I've mentioned, and the Santini that I will talk about later. It's better than those, and it is a very, very good recording. Next, we have one live from 1957, conducted by Fausto Cleva at the Met. Richard Tucker as Andrea CHENIER, Linda Warren as Carlo Gerard, and Milanov is Maddalena. We've talked about all three of these before, so I won't go into detail into it, but all three leads are in very good form here. Very, very good form. And it's not as well known as, Tucker in 60 and Warren and Milanov in 54. So this amalgam of these two recordings, I would say, is still a very worthy recording and a very good one that it is worth listening to. Then we have one from 1962 from Firenze. Bruno Rigacci conducts. Giuseppe Di Stefano is CHENIER. Ugo Savarese is Carlo Gerard. And Onelia Finesci is Maddalena. Well, Di Stefano's CHENIER. It is a very, very good CHENIER. But in terms of... Well, we all know Di Stefano, went all out with his voice, destroying his beautiful timbre by singing, all out, no covering and all of that. But that works surprisingly well as CHENIER because, well, CHENIER, you have to hear the desperation in the improviso, and he obviously provides that with his all-out approach. He, provides a hysterical si fisltato as well. Just that all-out quality that you want to hear in CHENIER. But that all-out singing has led to, Come un bel dì di maggio being a bit, a bit too... How should I say? It's not unrestrained, but it's a bit unrefined, so to speak. Ugo Savarese's Gerard I've talked about. Onelia Finesci as Maddalena here. A very fine soprano and a very overlooked one. Her Maddalena here. It is sung with vocal solidity. It is sung with nuance, with interpretation. There is a bit of a lack of a wow factor here and there, but it's a vocally solid and interpretationally acceptable Maddalena. The next one here is a radio broadcast from 1963, conducted by Franco Mannino with the orchestra and chorus of Rai Torino. It is a radio broadcast, which means it's a live performance under studio conditions, and that is why this is Bastianini's best Gerard. But let's talk about the other ones first. Charles Craig as André CHENIER here. He's a bit younger here than what most of you will hear Craig in. It isn't, the hefty, beefy, very dark Otello voice that you would hear even later in his career, although he's already 53 here. It's not that, dark and that baritonal, I would say. It still has a touch of, youth to his CHENIER here. It is sung with a lot of vocal solidness, obviously, for a tenor of his, vocal weight and size. But there is a commendable amount of interpretation and nuance in it, and it's a good reading of the role. Gabriella Tucci as Maddalena, a very youthful reading of the role of Maddalena, a bit similar, I would say, to Debaldi in 1953. It has the youth in there. It has, innocence and the virginal quality that you would perhaps expect in the Maddalena. I don't know. A bit lacking in, the verismo, the veristic quality, so to speak. I don't know. But the weight isn't lacking. It isn't lacking in vocal weight. It isn't just as, hysterical as you would expect from a verismo soprano. Carlo Gerard de Torre Bastianini. Let's get into it, shall we? His first aria here, which is Son 60 anni. It is not as vocally, fierce and powerful as he would have sounded live 1958 Napoli, but it has more nuance here, and it is a good build-up to the eventual change in character in Gerard later in the opera. His Nemico della Patria here, sung with emotion, sung with nuance, and that's not what you get from his other Andrea CHENIERs. This is his best Nemico della Patria. The F sharp here is sustained, with portamento, with all the beautiful colors and nuances in that F sharp, as you would expect from the high G in Renato Eri 2. And this is a very good recording of Bastianini's Gerard, owing to the fact that he's a bit older here, a bit more matured in terms of his interpretation, and it is a very, very good, it is the benchmark Gerard interpretation. Next, we have a recording from 1965, conducted by Francesco Molinari Pradella, San Francisco Opera. ANDREA CHENIER is Richard Tucker, Carlo Gerardo, Ettore Bastianini, Maddalena is Renata Tebaldi. I think La Mama Morta is missing here, which is a pity. But the rest of the opera, well, it's very well sung, but it basically has the same cast, the same leads as the 1960 from Metropolitan, and that one is in much better sound quality. Here from 1965, it is still a very good recording, I would say, a bit overlooked. Then we come to film recordings, or video recordings of this opera. We start off with one from 1955, with Mario Del Monaco as CHENIER, Giuseppe Taddei as Gerard, Antonia da Stella as Maddalena, and Franco Calabrese sings Ruscier here. Del Monaco's recording in 1955 on film is not as good as the 1955 live. It is slightly better than the studio one under Gavazzeni, but it's still not his best CHENIER. He just doesn't function very well under studio conditions, so to speak. Giuseppe Taddei's Carlo Gerard here. Taddei is a baritone who definitely knows how to sing with, emotion, with a moving quality, with compassion, and he does that here in Gerard. He is, I don't know why people associate him with Buffo roles or Mozart roles or, whatever. No, he is a very good Verdi baritone, he is a very good Verismo baritone. And here he shows that by singing very emotionally and the interpretation, the nuance as Gerard. Antonietta Stella as Maddalena, I've talked about that, not a fan. And the video quality isn't black and white. It isn't the best cinematography you can get, but it's a good video recording in terms of the cast and the singing. Yeah. Now the next one we have is from 1961. This is a live video recording from Tokyo, conducted by Franco Capuana. ANDREA CHENIER is Mario Del Monaco, Carlo Gerardo Brotti, Maddalena Renata Tebaldi, Anna Di Stasio is Bersi, Amelia Pini is both Contessa di Cogni and Madelon. Silvano Pagliuca, the great bass, sings Ruscier, Dumas, and the Maestro di Casa at the very start. The Monaco's CHENIER here. Now, there's a very good, Pagliacci. He does, the best cameo ever recorded in the same year, at the same location. This CHENIER is not as good as that one. Vocally speaking, he's obviously in a bit of decline here in the 60s, although he made a resurgence in the 70s. But the interpretation here, you can hear that he has the nuance. It is a more matured voice, presumably after doing a ton of Otellos. His voice would have been a bit more dry, more tired, and you could hear that here. It is not as good as the Canio from the same year, but it is still a very good reading of the role of CHENIER nonetheless. Aldo Brotti's Gerard I've talked about. He is not in any better form here. Renata Tebaldi, her Maddalena here. Well, we can see it on tape, but she's just not in good form. She is flat in the duets with Del Monaco and the top note from La Mama Morta. It is not very dramatic singing, not very verismo, not very outward. Just not a very good day for Tebaldi, I would say. But We still see Monaco and Tebaldi on video doing, some of their signature roles. So I'm not one to complain. Then we have a film recording from 1972 with Rai Milano, conducted by Bruno Bartoletti. Franco Corelli is Andrea Chenier, Piero Cappuccilli is Carlo Gerard, Maddalena is Celestina Casabietra, Luigi Roni is Ruscher here. Franco Corelli is Chenier in 1972. Well, I've just talked about that 1958 is a tad bit too early for his Chenier. 1966 is perfect, and 1972 here is a tad bit too late, because although you don't hear the kind of wobble, not wobble, but a loose vibrato that he had live around the 1972 mark, it isn't here. But what I would say is that it's become a bit dry. The sorrow, the bluish tear-like quality in his voice, the a bit of a steely voice, I would say. It's no longer here. And it's a bit dry. But all things considered, it's a very good recording of the role of Chenier. But I mean, the 1966 recording just ruins us. All the other recordings of Corelli's reading of this role, because that one is literally perfect. Piero Cappuccilli is Gerard here. I think that Cappuccilli, his Carlo Gerard, is second only to Bastianini. Why do I think so? Because he is probably the only baritone I've heard that actually sings Nemico della Patria with all his soul, with all his heart, with sorrow, and as if he's actually, he's actually just wanting that un sol bacio, that love that he so longs for. I don't know if that's the case in real life for him. I don't know, but he sings as if he is, longing for that love. And is absolutely amazing. His Nemico della Patria, amazing, absolutely amazing. The coloring on that F sharp is it is even better as his voice matured later on. At this point in 1972, his voice is still a bit, too solid, too stiff. I mean, to be, coloring all those notes with all those beautiful colors and nuances. So this is not his best Gerard. The best one I will talk about in our next recording. But here his Gerard is still, vocally solid and well sung. Casa Pietra's Maddalena is not very convincing. It is a small voice, a cardboard one, and not a lot of interpretation going on here. All things considered, though, Corelli, Chenier on film, I'm not complaining. And the next one here is from 1981 from the Vienna Staatsoper, conducted by Nello Santi. Andrea Chenier is Placido Domingo, Carlo Gerard is Piero Cappuccilli, and Maddalena is Gabriela Benashkova. A very old Fedora Barbieri makes a cameo as Madelon here. Now, Domingo's and Andrea Chenier. I think that Chenier is his second best role behind Don Jose. And I think that this one in 1981 is Domingo's last truly great recording. I've always insisted that Domingo was a very good tenor in the 60s and the early 70s, but from the mid 70s onwards he was a finished tenor. This I would say is his last truly great recording, because he was having out of 10 nights, 9 of them were bad nights for Domingo in the 80s, whereas about 2 of them would be bad in the 70s. So for Domingo to have a truly great performance in the 80s is a rarity, but this is one of them. He sings the improviso with nuance, with that impassioned quality that we don't so often hear in tenors of his age. This is not his best improviso. The best one I will talk about later in the individual aria category, which is 6th category. But anyway, he still sings very well here, and it is worth listening his CHENIER. Piero Cappuccilli as Carlo Gerard. It is crazy. This 1981 recording is mad. It is so incredible. I don't think that any single recording of Carlo Gerard can ever match this one. Just for reference, Placido Domingo, probably the most the most popular tenor of the 80s. His improviso got 2 minutes of applause. Pier Cappuccilli, his Nemico della Patria, got 5 minutes of applause. That's longer than the aria itself. 5 minutes of uninterrupted applause by the Vienna public. And they didn't seem like they were going to stop, and Nello Santi just continued the opera with the audience still applauding, and he just basically forced them to stop their applause. If not, it could have gone on for like 5 hours. I don't know, because I would have applauded that Nemico della Patria for 5 hours. Why? It is crazy. The F sharp there is sung with so much color, so much sorrow, and you really, I don't know what is wrong with you if you listen to this, if you see this, if you watch his acting and his singing, and you do not feel compassion for Gerard, of this loveless old man who just wants to once again find the hope and the meaning of life. Incredible. Words cannot describe this Nemico della Patria. That F sharp is just amazing. And last note, tu diligenti amar. It is sung with so much nuance, so beautiful. The entire aria here by Cappuccilli is a work of art, and it will take a Bastianini type baritone to ever come close to this Nemico della Patria. However, Gabriela Benashkova is a big letdown as Maddalena. She simply doesn't have the voice for a Verismo role. No, and it's weak, it's flimsy, and it's not a good Maddalena. But Domingo and Cappuccilli here, I would say Cappuccilli himself only, is already worth seeing this performance, because what a recording. I mean, I would be a bit controversial here and say that this Nemico della Patria, sung by Piero Cappuccilli, is among the top 5 best videotaped moments in the entirety of opera, and I'm not even exaggerating. It is that good. Yes, so go listen to it. Now, our last video recording is from 1991. It is conducted by Paolo Olmi in Genoa. CHENIER is Giuseppe Giacomini, Carlo Gerard is Giorgio Zancanaro, and Maddalena is Regina Dimitrova. Now, Giacomini's CHENIER. A very, very great CHENIER. Because what we think of Giacomini is a very dark, very baritonal tenor. Possibly a bit overboard for, a young French poet. But I'll let that slide, because his interpretation here, there's not just darkness, it's not just overwhelmingly suffocating darkness. It is, there's a bit of youth here and there, there's a bit of freshness, and the interpretation, you can hear the nuance, all of that is there. Giorgio Zanganaro's Gerard, possibly the last great Gerard that we have heard in this recording, 1991. Why is that so? Zancanaro is a very vocally solid baritone. It has a beautiful timbre, and it has the moving quality that we should hear in Nemico della Patria. All of it is there, and a very good performance by Zancanaro. And Dimitrova here as Maddalena. She had a big voice for sure, but she did not have the Verismo temperament that is required for Maddalena. As such, it is not a very convincing reading of the role. Yeah, the audience doesn't even applaud her after La Mamma Morta, which is a bit awkward. Yeah, but that explains it. Next, is the commercial recordings to avoid. Now, the first one is not at all a bad recording, but it's a very underwhelming one. I'll explain why to avoid it. Gabriele Santini conducts 1963 in studio. Teatro dell'Opera di Roma provides the orchestra and the chorus. Andrea CHENIER is Franco Borelli. Carlo Gerard is Mario Sterreni. Maddalena is Antonietta Stella. Giuseppe Modesti sings The Rusher and Fouquier Tinville. Paolo Montarsolo is Matthew. And Anastasio is Madelon. Now, what I feel about this is Corelli isn't trying in this CHENIER. He just wants to make a commercial recording of CHENIER, right? And it's logical. But he isn't in a very good form here. His singing is a bit uninspiring, compared to his live CHENIERs. You have the live CHENIERs of Corelli, especially the one from 1966, as a reference to Corelli's CHENIER. And in comparison, this is a very boring, a very dry, and not a very inspiring reading of the role of CHENIER. And Corelli in studio, it is sometimes good, sometimes it is not. And this one is one of the studio recordings of Corelli that did not turn out very well. Mario Sterreni as Carlo Gerard. Very light voiced, small and lyrical baritone, which is just lacking in the first part, the kind of more evil part of Gerard. He does sing Nemico della Patria movingly, but towards the end, you just don't feel that compassion again. And he's a bit throaty here as well. Stella here as a Maddalena, still not very inspiring singing. And, for a recording of such, such cast, such importance, such value, so to speak, it's not, a very good recording that you would expect it to be. And for that reason, it is extremely underwhelming when I listen to this. Next is James Levine's studio recording from 1976 with the Philharmonia Orchestra. Andrea CHENIER is Placido Domingo, Carlo Gerard, Cheryl Milnes, Maddalena, Renata Scotto. Domingo's studio recordings have never been big successes, although he could fix his cracked high notes and bad high notes and all that. But under studio conditions, his existing problem of nasality is truly exacerbated. You can really, hear how covered and how nasal his voice is when he records in the studio, and that makes listening to this CHENIER quite the unpleasant experience. Cheryl Milnes as Carlo Gerard, again under studio quality. His voice is just thin. It is sharp edged. And if he recorded Iago in the studio, it would have been very well sung because it's evil, it's well sung, it has the sharp edges and whatnot, but not for Gerard, a role that has to be movingly sung. And Milnes does not make a very good Gerard here as well. Scotto is still the biggest problem here as Maddalena. She very small voice, very weak voice. She sings very flimsily. There is no interpretation whatsoever, and it is not pleasant singing. It is not pleasant at all. So this is a recording to steer clear of. Then we have an ANDREA CHENIER from 1982, conducted by Riccardo Chailly. Andrea CHENIER is Luciano Pavarotti, Carlo Gerard is Leonucci, Maddalena di Coigny is Montserrat Caballé. The small roles here are filled with stars. The Countess is Astrid Varnay, Madelon Christa Ludwig, Rusher is Tom Krause, and Matthew is Giorgio Taddeo. That, four very, very good singers in the small roles, and the three leads are absolutely unbearable. So what's the point? Pavarotti as CHENIER. way too small a voice to be doing CHENIER. Way too small a voice. And that's why he just, especially in under studio, studio recordings, they can amplify his voice and whatnot, but it's fake. He still has to, scream out and yell out the role. The arias aren't sung with any nuance because he simply doesn't have the vocal heft, the vocal weight to do CHENIER, and that's why he yells through the role. Same for Leo Nucci. It's very obvious. He is a short tenor. And for any baritone role that he's ever sung, which is everything that he has ever sung, everything that has ever came out of his throat is forced, is woofy, it's barking. He's just yelling through every single thing. There is no interpretation whatsoever. I wouldn't say that Caballé is a bad Maddalena per se. She did record a very, very good Maddalena in 1966 in Philadelphia with Franco Corelli. But here, almost 20 years later, her voice is basically gone. And no, it's not very, very good at all. Compared to the 1966 recording, it's weaker, it's a bit wobbly, and it's flimsy, and it's not a good Maddalena. Then we have a recording from 1985. This is a video recording, and to avoid, it is conducted by Julia Zarurel, Andrea CHENIER is Placido Domingo, Carlo Gerard is Giorgio Zancanaro, and Maddalena is Anna Tomova Sintao. Now, I would say that Zancanaro, he does a very, very good Gerard here. Unfortunately, that doesn't matter because, firstly, Domingo here is not in good form as he would usually be in the 80s. The one from the one from Vienna in 1981 is his last great recording, as I've said, and here he is just mediocre. He's a bit of yelling through the role. He is much more nasal than he was in that recording, and it is much more barking than he would do so in 1981. There is less interpretation, there is less nuance, and all of it is not good. Same goes with Anna Tomova Sintao, way too small a voice to be doing Maddalena, and as a result, she is either inaudible or she is yelling at the top of her lungs, and that way it ruins the music of Maddalena. A very big pity because Zancanaro is very good here as Gerard, but the couple, CHENIER and Maddalena, just isn't up to the standard. The last one that I would recommend you avoid is another video recording from 1996. This one is conducted by James Levine at the Met. Andrea CHENIER is Luciano Pavarotti, Carlo Gerard is Juan Pons, and Maddalena is Maria Gulegina. Now, Pavarotti in the 90s, a lost cause, honestly. He's just doing everything that he can. He's even sung Othello. And at this point, his voice is only a shadow of what it once was. Of course, I've said that he is not a voice for CHENIER at all, but it's even worse in the 90s than it was in the 80s because, well, that one is in studio, they could amplify his voice and whatnot, but here it's live. There's no redeeming that voice, and no, it is just not a good reading of CHENIER at all. Juan Pons as Gerard, throaty, woofy, very rough, unrefined, very there is no interpretation. He's just barking through the role, and that is I hate Gerard's music being destroyed like that. Maria Gulegina is not much better. Very throaty soprano, very bad technique. Yeah, she like Juan Pons, she just barks through the role and destroys all the music of Maddalena, and it sucks because the music here is absolutely beautiful, and to have voices like these do such damage to it, you can't bear to see it, yeah? Now for something much better. Good recordings of aria scenes and excerpts from the opera.
First one I've chosen is the only, excerpted, abridged opera recording of ANDREA CHENIER that I've included here. It's from 1949, conducted by Victor de Sabata, and it has Mario Del Monaco as CHENIER, Paolo Silveri as Carlo Gerard, Renata Tebaldi as Maddalena, Fedora Barbieri as Madelon here, Giuseppe Modesti as Ruscher. Now, Del Monaco's improviso here. It is second. I wouldn't even say second. I honestly think that this is the best improviso that has ever been recorded. He is still very much a spinto tenor here, a very youthful, very fresh voice. Really reminds you of a poet. But then we have Delmonico's improviso, the B flat and the second B flat, the portamento up to that, the emotional intensity, the impassioned quality of just declaiming the last lines. Divino tono, non lo schernir del mondo, l'anima è vita e l'amor. It is unequaled, and in this recording at 1949, absolutely amazing. Amazing. I mean, it is the definitive improviso. People will hate it and say that it's being, melodramatic. He's just yelling. This is what verismo is all about, huh? Renata Tebaldi here, Her la Mama Morta, again from 1949. A bit more subdued than her later versions, a bit similar to 1953 in studio, and it is very well sung here. It's voiced properly. It has the verismo temperament, but again there's the freshness of voice, there's the color, there's the interpretation, the nuance, everything is there. Paolo Silveri as Gerard is another very great Gerard, because Gerard is a role that requires both evil, dark singing, and moving and emotional, sorrowful singing. Silveri can do both, and he does both in this recording. In his Nemico della Patria especially. We don't have the CHENIER's arias in Act 3 and 4, but it's okay because the improviso is already enough, and Gerard and Maddalena's big arias are there as well. And De Sabata, what a conductor! Amazing, amazing conducting here in ANDREA CHENIER. He reached the score like no other does. Those melodies, absolutely beautiful melodies. He put so much detail to it, and I particularly adore one moment where CHENIER sings. E a lei serviva di scrigno il firmamento. And then the Zapata, he holds the flutes until he Del Monaco finishes singing Firmamento, and then he holds the flutes, and it is an ethereal experience. And De Sabata is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, Italian opera conductor of all time, and he does exceptionally good here. Now we have two recordings of the improviso that I particularly enjoy. The first one is Enrico Caruso. Well, Mr. Caruso can do everything, and his CHENIER is as excellent as anything else that he touched. The improviso, he does a beautiful, beautiful portamento up to the B flat, and you know that he's actually singing the words. He's actually interpreting the words, and bringing out every word in the libretto and using every single ounce of that absolute beauty in the music and the libretto, and it culminates in a very beautiful improviso. The second improviso I've chosen,
This is actually part of a complete recording, but I don't have that recording. I haven't found that complete recording. It's available online for purchase, but I don't have the financial capability to buy it. So if you've listened to this improviso and decides that, I have to get the full thing for sure, then go get it. Anyway, it's Placido Domingo at the Met from 1970 singing the improviso. Wow, what an improviso. I think it's up there with Delmonico 49 and Corelli 66. I definitely think so. These are the best, three best improvisos that I've ever heard. Domingo from 1970. His improviso, the start of it, the first phrases, he sings it with so much, emotional intensity, with so much, gentleness. It really sounds like a poet that has been wounded by Maddalena's untimely words of sneering at his love, and the latter part of the aria, he is really an impassioned young man, just longing for the love. And what a reading of this aria. It is incredible, absolutely incredible. The rest of the cast says Anselmo Colzani as Gerard and Renata Tebaldi as Maddalena, but I haven't heard the rest of it, so I can't give a judgment on it. But Domingo's improviso here is amazing, so I have to include it as a separate recording of an aria, just because I only have this. Then we come to our final ones, which are two recordings of Nemico della Patria. The first one is Apollo Granforte. It only starts from Undimera di Gioia, so it's a bit shorter than I would love it to be. But again, the F sharp is beautiful, absolutely beautiful. The portamento up there is smooth. It's a marbly texture in the voice. It is emotional singing, very expressive. All that you want in Nemico della Patria is there, and it is very emotional singing, very expressive, and that's all that you want. The last one, however, I consider the best recording of Nemico della Patria ever, even better than Bastianini 63 and Cappuccilli 81. This is Gianni Maffeo, a baritone that didn't record much, but every time that he recorded, it is absolutely amazing. Now, his Nemico della Patria is amazing, absolutely amazing. It is one of the best, arias ever recorded in the history of opera. Why so? I believe that Maffeo is a natural bass, just like how Ramon Vinay is a natural baritone, but he sings tenor. Maffeo is a natural bass, and he sings baritone because he has the upper extension to do so. Maffeo did sing small bass roles at La Scala, so it wouldn't be all that surprising if he was, a bass at birth and he sang baritone roles. He did have a good upper extension, which allowed him to do baritone roles. Well, he does them with amazing, vocalisms. And his Gerard here, his Nemico della Patria, it is sung with incredible darkness because he is a bass, I believe. It is like a bass singing this aria, and the expressiveness that he brings in that kind of darkness is incredible. The F sharp at the top is very expressive and very dark, but very, very sorrowful in quality, very tear-like, and that with the very dark timbre is a very, very good match, and the end result is perhaps one of the best recordings of one of the best arias ever written, and I truly believe so. Anyway, this has been a fun video to make. This is an opera which I absolutely adore. It has been a pleasure making this video, and I do hope to talk to you very soon. Peace out.